So we're talking college sports in the Deep South, where college football is king and the battle cry is War Eagle. Welcome everybody, all you YouTubers. Once again, it's K-Stu the GOAT for Vernon Speaks Sports TV. We're mostly talking about Auburn football, basketball. Hadn't got around to baseball yet, or equestrian. We're pretty good at equestrian. Y'all look that up, all right? War Eagle. Anyway, you can also find me on Facebook at the All About Auburn group on Facebook. We do a lot of live streams over there, got a lot of great content, and also our affiliate group, Tiger Talk. Man, Mike Willis does a great job of providing all of that supplementary content, like your equestrian, softball, gymnastics, all of those different things. Man, we appreciate what his group brings to the table, as well as we go into the spring, week 3 of spring football practice, which has largely been under the scope because of the recent success of the Auburn basketball team, who are the SEC tournament champions, riding a 12-game winning streak into the Final Four against Virginia, which we will talk about in another video. But as we approach spring training, kind of shoring some things up. A-Day is April the 13th. And we start to wonder, will Auburn be able to produce a 1,000-yard receiver? Hasn't been able to do so since 1999, when Ronnie Daniels made the transition from Major League Baseball, deciding to come back to college football, and his athleticism led him to be the last player to reach that point. Now, when you look at the Auburn receivers over the years, you had some pretty good ones. You talk about guys like Emory Blake. You talk about guys like, Darvin Adams back in 2009, 2010. Had 997 yards in 2009, almost getting that 1,000-yard mark. 3 more. All they had to do was throw a screen to him, and he would have had 1,000 yards, provided he didn't lose yards on the play. All right, and then you talk about Frank Sanders back in 1994, and of course, more recently, Sammy Coates, who had 902 yards in that 2013 SEC national championship campaign, which leads me to the thought. In 2019, the 2019 recruiting class had a prospect who was arguably one of the best wide receivers in that particular recruiting class, in George Pickens. Now, for the most part of his recruitment, he had been verbally committed to Auburn. Decides on signing day, actually, to convert over to be a Georgia Bulldog. And, really when you look at it, maybe for good reason. Auburn has not produced a, 1,000-yard receiver. Usually the receiver is not the center of attention on Auburn's football team because they're so run heavy, especially now that with Gus Malzahn at the helm, with that run pass option. And a lot of the routes and a lot of the big plays are created not necessarily because of the pro type skill set of the wide receiver, but it's because of the imbalance that it creates and because of the passing lanes that it creates because of that imbalance, especially once the run pass option really gets going. And he probably looked at the fact that Auburn has not had a high-level draft pick in the NFL, because if you look at most of the guys that have been drafted wide receiver-wise from Auburn, you're talking about, 6th round, 7th round. Sammy Coates might have been the highest one, around 3rd round. And that's not really encouraging for a high-level wide receiver like George Pickens, especially when he sees over at Georgia. You have like the historical A.J. Green and Riley Ridley and Tyrone Gobb, all of those guys who have, gone on to the NFL and have performed fairly well and did not have to run a 4.2 40 to be seen by NFL scouts. Now, as we go into the 2019 season, we have a lot of promise at that skill position, wide receiver wise. Man, you talk about a wealth of very diverse talent, okay? You got a guy like, say, Sal Cannella. Well, before we get into this, let's go back into some of the relapse of the 2018 season. First of all, you had Will Hastings and Eli Stove, who were injured with knee injuries, torn ACLs in the 2018 spring practice. Okay, so you didn't have their utilization. Then you also had the idea of, Nate Craig Myers leaving the program. Okay, then Sal Cannella was actually thinking about leaving the program, but good thing he didn't, because that would have put a huge dent in wide receiver depth. So therefore, Auburn had to rely heavily on freshmen. A lot of freshmen inexperienced, like Anthony Schwartz, Seth Williams, who really had a very, very good showing in his freshman campaign, making that key catch against Texas A&M, which showed a lot of promise. Had some great catches against Ole Miss. The thing that I want Seth Williams to work on during the spring practice, though, is his balance once he catches the football in the open field. He doesn't seem comfortable at the college level running the ball in open field yet, because I think he has a lot more speed than he shows on film. But right now he's starting to get adjusted to the catch to run balance. Okay, and the speed of the SEC is a lot different than it was in Cottondale, Alabama, when he played at Paul W. Bryant High School, ironically out of Tuscaloosa, choosing Auburn over Alabama. Either way, that's something that hopefully he's working on this particular spring. And you got to remember, Seth Williams actually did not have the privilege of early enrollment. He actually was a guy who in fall practice, emerged and, kind of came in with that raw talent. Really didn't have a chance to work with him in the spring or the summer. Big shout out to Seth Williams. Great freshman season for him. And then you look at, the return of Eli Stove and Will Hastings. Will Hastings still kind of nursing that ACL injury, but hopefully he will be all the way back intact come fall, because he and Eli Stove really create a lot of havoc and a lot of anxiety for defenses, because they're so fast and there's so many things that they can do. Will Hastings actually has a very nice cut route into the deep route where he's usually wide open. Eli Stove tends to be a little bit more of an intermediate passing game threat. Also, you talk about the king of the jet sweep. And he and Anthony Schwartz are really going to have a ball with this jet sweep thing. And plus, Anthony Schwartz showed some skills as far as catching the football and creating separation. He's definitely a game breaker whenever he touches the football. Also, Marquise McClain has been in the conversation spring practice wise, and also Matthew Hill, who was a highly recruited young man as well. Didn't see much time last year, but looking to get into the depth chart this year. So, the question was asked, can Auburn have a 1,000-yard receiver? Maybe so. But when you look at years, like back in 2013, Auburn spread the ball around pretty well, to where I don't think anybody, really will have a huge problem with the dispersity as to how Auburn, kind of spreads the ball around. So, you look at, that year with Sammy Coates, Ricardo Lewis and guys like that who got their touches. I think it was a great thing for the Auburn Tigers. And when you look at their receiving statistics from that year, you talk about Sammy Coates with 902 yards, Marcus Davis with 217 yards, and then C.J. Uzuma, who's enjoying a very nice college career with 154 yards that year. Also, Ricardo Lewis with 28 catches and 325 yards. But you kind of switch that thing over to the 2014 season, where you had a lot more balance. You had a situation where you had two guys with 700 plus yards, and in Duke Williams and Sammy Coates. Also, Ricardo Lewis contributing with 261 yards, and Melvin Ray obviously with 182 yards. So I think it will probably be more of a scenario like the 2014 year, where the ball will be spread around a lot more, to where you'll have two top-heavy guys, and those two top-heavy guys that I'm looking at, is Seth Williams. I'm really big on Sal Cannella's athleticism and ability to catch the football. He kind of comes off to me as more of a Duke Williams, Nate Craig Myers type receiver. So it's a lot to get excited about if you are an Auburn Tiger when it comes to the passing game. Because a lot of folks are like, okay, can we get this run game going? Can we get a 1,000-yard runner going? But man, I'm telling you, with the talent that the Auburn Tigers have at receiver, you can look for some noise to be made at the receiver position. Once again, it's Case to the GOAT for Vernon Speaks Sports, mostly talking about Auburn football and the rest of the SEC. Do me a favor, guys. Comment. The Fearless and True Gang really get into it with these comments after the videos. Also, subscribe to my channel. We are growing. I'm looking forward to doing some live chats with you guys very soon. War Eagle.